The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Breaking humanity, one soul at a time. This is the World You Don't Know radio show with your host, Nick O'Connell.
You're very welcome along to this week's edition of The World You Don't Know with myself, Mick O'Connell, and I have a very interesting show lined up for tonight. I've got a returning guest, Mr. Neil Sanders. He's been a wonderful guest. I had him on, oh God, it must be over a year ago now since he was last on, and I really had a great show with him the last time, and unfortunately, as I said at the time, an hour is not enough for the kind of stuff we were talking about. Now, Neil Sanders holds an MA in Film Studies, studied psychology and media production for his BA honours, and is a qualified hypnotherapist. Neil is considered an expert on the subject of mind control and has been studying the history of this dark art and its application by military and government intelligence agencies across the globe for many years. Neil has also appeared on several television shows and made numerous radio appearances in Europe and the USA, and is the author of Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own, Volumes 1 and 2, and he's several other books as well, which we'll probably discuss tonight. So he joins me tonight for the second time on the show to talk about, I suppose, mind control in the music industry. And one thing I am going to ask him about this evening is what's going on in the mainstream media right now, in particular North Korea. Anyway, I'll go straight to Neil. Good evening, Neil.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, and how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Well, listen, you're very welcome back onto the show. Thanks very much for agreeing to come back on.
Oh, no, thank you very much for inviting me on.
And I have a couple of questions that have already been sent in, and I'll get to them in a while. And for anyone else that does want to text the show, the text line is now working again. It hasn't been for the last while. So the text line is 087 062 7138. That's 087 062 7138 if you have any comments about what you hear on the show tonight. So Neil, your books, you've written books about mind control. Now I've read a book about mind control, Transformation of America by Cathy O'Brien, an absolutely fantastic book, and to say the book put the hairs up on the back of my neck would be an understatement. If what she's saying is true in that book, we really do live in a very dark world indeed.
Oh, well, I mean, I can't really speak to her specifically. I mean, she ticks all the right boxes and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there were certainly very, very similar admitted programs. Christine Di Nicola and I can't remember the other lady's name. But basically, these were women that were apologised to by President Clinton in 1995. They were actually taken into programs when they were quite young. It was actually a project called Artichoke, and in this there was all sorts of pretty grim stuff that was done to them. One thing that was particularly done to them, they were sent to a place called Deep Creek cabins in Maryland, and essentially they were trained to be underage prostitutes, and they were very, very young at the time that they were doing this. They were about sort of 5, 6, or I think she was 9 actually at the time she was in Deep Creek, and the purpose of this was basically to entrap business leaders and foreign dignitaries and that type of people with the notion that they could blackmail these people in the future, and this was actually an admitted tactic during. This is what was admitted. Why boys were being taken out of Kinkora and other children's homes. And this was admitted by Ken Livingstone that essentially they were trying to ensnare high-ranking members of Republican groups or nationalist groups and trying to smear them with this particular action.
I think the name of the place that you're talking about where all that was occurring was a property in London called Dolphin Square. Is that correct?
Well, Dolphin Square is basically it's a square where with a block of flats there, and I think there's some businesses there, and essentially there's a lot of suggestion that the MPs were using these apartments connected with this type of thing.
Because I think there was reference made to it in that movie Legend, you know, the remake of The Craze with Tom Hardy.
Oh yeah,
there was a scene there, and it was in like a flat that was sort of. I reckon they were referring to Dolphin Square anyway when they had this scene, and I think it was Lord Boothby. I think it might have been.
Yeah,
and he was meeting the Craze, and
they were running boys with him, providing boys for him. And the suggestion is again that they were perhaps that was a lot more wide-ranging than people had first appreciated.
As you just alluded to there a moment ago, for use in blackmail for future reference, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Now, I'll move on now to something else I want to... I tell you, I'm going to ask you a question because we are going to talk about the music industry, which is something you cover quite a lot, and a lot of other things besides. But I have one question that's in relation to the music industry, and it's from one of my listeners, Gavin. And he says, how are you, Mick? He says, great fan of your work. He said, Neil is a top bloke, so you've got a fan out there, Neil, and has specialty in both mind control and music. And his question to you is, the rave culture... He says he's suspicious about the mix of pulsating, repetitive music, strobe lighting, and then couple that then with the ecstasy and all that was going with that. Do you think there was a massive mind control exercise taking place there?
It's possible. I mean, hi, Gavin, by the way. Thank you for your question. The thing about the rave culture is that basically it was a sudden introduction of a drug, and it was something that basically altered the behaviour of a vast swathe of society. You could see that as potentially sort of a social experiment. What was interesting was that fundamentally what came out of rave culture was the law, which I can never remember the name of, that essentially stopped that culture. It stopped free parties. It stopped outdoor sort of festivals and
I think it was to do with that young girl. I think she was the daughter of a policeman, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, and Leah Betts.
That was it.
I was
yeah.
suspicious of that basically, you know, she died in those horrible, obviously, but yeah, I mean that was certainly used to crack down on people as well. I can't remember the name of that law, but basically what it is was you just put an end to free parties. It was a very draconian measure that came in off the back of it, and you could see that as a sort of a response to a crisis in society that could well have been engineered in order to create that circumstance, basically.
And do you think it was an engineered crisis, or do you think it was a crisis that the government couldn't get a handle on, and that's why they came down on it in such a draconian
fashion? Well, either way, do you know what I mean? It's like sometimes I think basically they engineer these things. Sometimes I think that when presented with lemons, they make lemonade. Dependent on the circumstance. I really don't know, because I don't know. The only thing I've heard is that basically the first shipment of ecstasy pills that was, or the first major shipment of ecstasy pills that was brought into England via Amsterdam, at least two of the Happy Mondays just so happened to be in on that particular run. That's according to them. Whether this is true or not is entirely a different story, but and I don't believe that they were actually the happy. Well, maybe they were the Happy Mondays at that point, but
well, they were right in the middle of that culture, weren't they? The Happy Mondays, and a few other bands like them. They were right smack bang inside of all that. Now, you cover mind control, and for anybody out there who's wondering what we're actually talking about, Neil, you cover for the most part the mass manipulation of society via the music industry, film, TV. You know, we're getting assaulted from all different angles, and it's your belief, I think, isn't it, that people's the narrative, I suppose, for society has been steered in different directions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite deliberately.
A big fun?
Quite deliberately being steered. Like the hip hop culture, for example.
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing is, right, civilization's a complicated thing, and so in order to stop people rising up and going, why the bloody hell am I going to work all day? And like, why are they getting all this money off everybody for free? And like, what's this concept of the aristocracy, etc., etc., etc.? You've got to sort of fill people's time, and you can exhaust them with work. You can, terrify them with bills. You can fill them with aspirations that can never be really filled because they don't actually. Once you get to one point, it's just a jumping off point to go to the next level, or you can fill them with in inverted commas culture, and if you've got this culture, I mean, this is the point, right? Okay, it sounds rather silly, like why would people be interested in entertainment and your free time and stuff like that? But again, if you take this concept of running a civilization, if you're not at work and you're not asleep, that's the time when you could be like, looking at your lot and going, hang on, this is crap. This is why we got this. Like, this is completely a disproportionate distribution of wealth and goods. So they've got to fill your time, and so you do. There's a CIA liaison office with Hollywood. They're very, very heavily involved with Hollywood in order to promote and depict positive stereotypes around American, the concept of America, American foreign policy, American military, and American citizenship. Basically, like this is an admitted fact. A film, something as stupid as the Transformers film, is actually a really very subtle advertisement for it's cool to be in the military because you get to blow stuff up.
Yeah, it's a bit like the Avatar. I know Avatar had an awful lot of symbolism in it and an awful lot of hidden messages, but I think one of them was, it's cool to join the military. Join the military and you'll go on these big, amazing missions with us and stuff like that. But, we know that movie's about an invading force. They're there for the resources and nothing else, just like the American military today in the world. I want to ask you about North Korea. What do you think is going on there? They seem to be the latest bad guy now.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but basically it was being reported a few months ago, about the time that we got really sniffy about them doing missile tests, that they'd stopped importing or exporting rare earth to China. And so they were getting into a row with China about this. They've got this huge deposits of rare earth, which is basically used for electronics and that type of thing. And for whatever reason, they decided to stop selling this to China. So China basically, I think they imposed it or threatened to impose a trade embargo on them. And just about that time, they started doing missile tests, and Trump started getting really snotty about it. Now, this is it's a bit of a complicated one, because basically North Korea is a bit of a sort of strange one. It's not very particularly powerful. It has got the capacity to destroy and kill a lot of people very, very close to it. Usually when it's doing its missile tests and stuff like that, it's making threats towards the UN in a really sort of childish way to essentially say, please give us some more money. So it's like you could equate it to an old man that's in a nursing home saying, right, I'm going to go and get my shotgun unless I get my dinner. And they go, oh, all right, here you go, John, here's your dinner and extra portions for you and stuff like that. It's just a game that they play. It doesn't mean that basically it's not an incredibly dangerous state.
I do wonder about that, Neil, because as you well know, we grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and watching the mainstream media and telling us who the bad guy was, and we believed them. But now as grown men, we have the capacity now to look back on all of that stuff and say most of that was bullshit. Like Saddam Hussein wasn't the baddie they said he was. So how are we supposed to believe North Korea?
But he wasn't. He was our baddie, so we let him get away with it.
So you understand that? I know that. But they lied about weapons of mass destruction, for example. Of
course.
He didn't have any. So now we see them, going on about North Korea having all these nuclear missiles. They said he let off a nuclear bomb the other day that was 5 or 6 times more powerful than Hiroshima.
I'm sure that's exaggerated.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They've been spending enough on military and buying enough of our weapons over the years to know that they have enough to do some damage to, say, Seoul or something like that. Yeah. You don't need nuclear weapons to murder a hell of a lot of people. Is this a distraction for Trump? Yeah. Do they mean it? Probably not. Now, what I mean by dangerous state, but I don't know. I mean, what I mean by dangerous state is that they've got this self-imposed God dictatorship where nothing can go against. It's like a Shakespearean drama. It's an incredible. It's like 1984 on steroids. It's so you can't go against the state in Korea. You get murdered if you don't cheer loud enough for the dictator. It is an incredible, ridiculous and dangerous place to be.
But do you think it really is like that, Neil, or do you think it's Western propaganda?
No, I think it's true.
Because I seen a documentary there that was allegedly smuggled out of North Korea 3 or 4 years ago, and it's doing the rounds on YouTube.
Yeah, it wasn't. They just used that. You're talking about propaganda, the one that basically...
Yeah, where they're slagging us off, and everything they're saying is actually true and right.
Absolutely. Now, I, again, used to think that was from North Korea as well. It transpires that was just a marketing ploy.
Right, well, it was a very good one because I had me filled, I have to say.
I mean, let's say I absolutely believe that myself for a long time. This is the thing, it's complicated. Are we using this as an excuse, as a distraction? Yeah, absolutely. Are we going to lie about it? Yeah. Are there other reasons? Yeah, like with all these things, they always keep a sort of an ace in the hole. No one could deny that Saddam Hussein was a bad person that murdered people, right? Okay, but there's lots of people that we prop up that murder people. It's just that they decide to use that when when circumstance dictates that it's beneficial for them. It's a complicated notion. I mean, you could make the argument that we murder people. Like the UK, America murder people. We murder our own citizens. Like, we murder our own journalists, okay? We just pretend that we don't and say that other people do.
I mean, look at Dr. David Kelly. He's a prime example of, what the British government is prepared to do to shut somebody up.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, there's numerous examples, isn't there? But yeah, very absolutely. So it's very strange. It's not as clear cut as any of that. I think it's difficult to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's an insane maniac, but so is Trump.
Yeah. Trump is a lunatic. I mean, the one thing I've noticed about it, and I said this on my show long before he was even elected, no matter what he does, at least the news is going to be interesting with him in it, and it is. The news has been an absolute roller coaster since he got inaugurated.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a day gone by that something major's not going on somewhere, and he's sort of right in the middle of it, whether it's his crazy tweets that he's putting out there and whatnot. It's just it's the maddest presidency I've ever seen.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think that, again, there's a degree of theatre for this. Like, the news media could destroy Trump.
I'm sure they have enough on him anyway to destroy
quickly
him.
By talking about his connections to Jeffrey Epstein. Which they'll never do. They don't really talk about Clinton's connections to Jeffrey Epstein either. But
and he's a convicted paedophile, wasn't he?
Hang on, this is from 2002. I've known Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, is the convicted paedophile, the person that basically there was a young girl. She was about 14 at the time. She was a call girl that was hired when she used to work at Trump's Mar-a-Lago golf resort by Ghislaine Maxwell, and she was pictured with Prince Andrew. I don't know if people remember this.
Yes, I remember that story, yeah.
Yeah, well, Jeffrey Epstein was the guy that was convicted of, has been convicted of several paedophilic acts, and Trump said this about him in 2002. I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. He's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do. Many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life.
Yeah, it's a bit sinister, all right, that, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. And there's numerous examples, basically, of him through the 2000s, like being in contact with Jeffrey Epstein, going to his Palm Beach estate, going to his Manhattan house for dinner. He was subpoenaed in 2009 to give a deposition on Epstein, but basically, he arranged to have this done without him having to go to court.
Yeah, it's all very, very strange, all right. I mean, friends in high places and all of that. Listen, I need to go to a quick set of ads, Joe, so do you mind hanging on in the background?
Yeah, no worries.
That'd be great. Folks, we'll be back in a couple of minutes with Neil Sanders. Talk to you very shortly.
Broadcasting to Lucan, this is Liffey Sound, 96.4 FM.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome back. Neil, you're still with me, I take it?
Yes.
That's
hi.
Brilliant. Now, Neil, you cover, as I said earlier on, the music industry quite a lot. Do you think there was a point in history where, the music industry changed? Like, do you think it was innocent enough, or do you think it's always been controlled, in a manipulative way? Because if you look at some of the music that's out nowadays, compared to what I was listening to growing up, there's a lot of sinister lyrics in the songs and an awful lot of symbolism in videos, particularly with the likes of Beyonce and Lady Gaga and stuff, a lot of satanic type stuff. What do you think is going on? What's happening with the music industry, Neil?
Well, again, I think that it's used to direct people a lot more than people would give credit for, because as we sort of discussed before, it's a vital part of sort of controlling society is to fill all the different times, and so what it can do with music is direct people in different ways, and there's different debates to the symbolism that is shown in these videos as to why it's there, whether it's just sort of, there's different arguments, whether it is to direct people towards consumerism or to more occult interests, whether that's on purpose, whether it's to create views, whether it's to create an echo chamber, whether it's there's a lot of strangeness. But what's certainly true is that there's a lot of stuff that is there, and a lot of stuff that is there that you wouldn't know to look for unless you sort of were versed in certain things, and particularly sort of like, say, older Rihanna videos and stuff like that. There was stuff that's in the background that's quite strange. Again, is this a marketing campaign?
That's what I was wondering. Is it deliberately put there for satanic reasons, or since the internet came about, say 20 years ago?
Yeah.
You know, prior to that, most people, unless you were a deep researcher, would have never have heard of the Illuminati and all that kind of stuff, right? And over the last 15 years, the Illuminati has sort of exploded online. You know, people are hearing more and more about them. Is this the music industry jumping on that bandwagon and using that as a sort of a hook?
I think in a lot of cases, yes. And I think that's what certainly muddies it. And also, in a lot of cases, you get, say, artists that don't actually know what's going to happen on the video set until they turn up and go, oh, what's this? Oh, you stand in this pentagram or whatever. And there's a few artists that have sort of complained about that. But there's also a lot of artists, a lot of credible artists, people like DMX, Noriega and stuff like that, particularly within the hip-hop, Choke No Joke and other people that are connected to Rockefeller, for example, that have said, look, no, there was a distinct vibe that was going through these things. There were certain things that you expected to do and certain things that you expected to promote and be a part of. And if you didn't do that, then you were sort of kicked off, or you weren't the hot property anymore. And there's, again, Cat Williams has spoke about this a lot. There's different things that they suggest. One thing that's certainly true is that basically they don't tend to market positive imagery. I mean, hip hop is another example of that, where positivity and even sort of violent positivity, like anti-police stuff, is eschewed in favour of more sort of self-destructive glorification of drug use, glorification of pimps, glorification of gangster lifestyle for the sake of gangster lifestyle with no context. Like, it's not like a sort of F the Police song or a storyteller like Criminal Minded or something like that. It's just celebration of violence. And,
because if you look at the early
entry.
days of, like, say, NWA, I remember you speaking on the Richie Allen show about this. I was having a listen there the other day, and I remember what you said to Richie was that when NWA came out first, I know he wasn't a big hip-hop fan, but I would have known who they were, because I have relatives who would have been hip-hop fans, and still are. But when NWA came out first, and I've seen the movie Straight Outta Compton, so I got what they were about then after watching that movie. A lot of their songs were talking about social injustice, the police beating up on black people and all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden, as you said, it's sort of migrated into this violence against women crap and violence against the police. Whereas NWA, they weren't promoting violence against the police. They were talking about the violence that the police were perpetrating upon them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a by any means necessary sort of thing, and there was gangster glorification, and particularly towards the latter NWA albums of glorification of, like, sex and stuff like that. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's theatre, but as you say, they were far more socially conscious than is perhaps given credit for them. And I think that the major change happened probably with Death Row Records, to be quite honest. That was, I mean, one of the conscious things that Death Row did was affiliate themselves with a gang. By having, Suge Knight appear in all red.
So it became the Bloods and the Crips.
Huh?
It became the Bloods and the Crips, versus each other.
Yeah, I mean, they had a sort of uneasy allegiance with Snoop and various and Corrupt and Daz being Crips, and DJ Quick and Suge and various other people being Pyru on the label. But yeah, they certainly promoted that gangster lifestyle for the sake of gangster lifestyle. Gangsterism with no context, essentially, like just promoting it as being a very sort of positive thing. A lot of things bizarrely all came around at the same time. Basically, the proliferation of crack cocaine, which basically came off the back of Iran-Contra. which was, essentially the American government of financing people to overthrow a socialist government in South America and buying cocaine off them. They're also selling weapons to both Iran and Iraq at the same time, and using this cocaine to basically give it to people like Harry O, who was basically the financier of Death Row Records, and through people like Danilo Blandon, who I think he now still works for the DEA, but he was essentially a Nicaraguan drug smuggler getting in with Freeway Ricky Ross, and then all of a sudden, crack cocaine explodes. It's all over the media, and everybody knows about it. And like, it was originally called Ready Rock. It was crack actually came from the news media. Ready Rock was what it was called, and crack essentially was a better, I suppose, marketing ploy. This again, like, bizarrely, just so happened to coincide with Scarface being released, and Scarface was one of these films that was actually quite badly received at the time, but for better or for worse, became a sort of mainstay of black community, because essentially what Al Pacino was portraying was a hero that was not white. He wasn't black, but he was not white. I know he dies at the end, but essentially it's a rags to riches story, and it's something that is all of a sudden relatable.
I mean, if you look at any hip hop video, there's hardly a hip hop video out there that doesn't have a picture of Scarface somewhere in the background. They do emulate him.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the joke, wasn't it? That basically you didn't have your MTV Cribs episode until you had Scarface in that stupid film by Harmony Korine. Oh Christ, what's it called? The one where they're all in bikinis robbing people. James Franco has Scarface on he's a gangster in it, and he has Scarface playing 24 hours a day on continuous loop in his house.
Right, and I haven't seen it now. I'm not sure. I'm aware of that. Bother. If anybody out there knows what movie he's talking about, text me. It's
got Gucci Mane in it. It's just terrible.
Right.
But I can't remember what it's called. Spring Breakers.
I've never heard of that film. No, I must look it up.
No, don't.
Right. No, I won't. It's probably a load of tosh anyway. So listen, that's the hip hop side of things, and we know what's happened there, and I seen hip hop as a way to control the black communities in America and to destroy them at the same time. And it's not too hard to see that that's actually happened. Over on this side of the Atlantic, like in Ireland, we had U2 back in the 80s, and I went to see U2 on my 15th birthday in Cork and Park Cave, and it was an absolutely brilliant concert. It was the Joshua Tree tour, and Bono was at the height of his rebellious stage at that time. Sunday Bloody Sunday would have been in the charts and sort of this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, something happened to Bono. Now, I don't know what happened to him, but he just went in a different direction altogether. One minute he's there slagging off, these globalists and these big corporations and, American governments interfering in different countries around the world. Now all of a sudden he's hobnobbing with all these politicians. Yeah. Was he made an offer he can't refuse, or is he just a knob?
Who knows? I'm sure it was pointed out to him that this particular line of marketing will lead to this particular demographic, and this particular line of thinking and action will lead to this demographic, and one of them is very, very, very lucrative.
And you think that it was the money, I suppose, that swayed them? They're not to sell their souls. Because a lot of people, when U2 rose up in this country, a lot of Irish people would have looked up to them. Seeing them as this rebel band, and they were out there and they were mocking the system, and they were the voice of the working class to a degree. And then all of a sudden, Bob Geldof went the way he went after Live Aid and turned into a person that most Irish people can't stand, to be honest with you. And Bono was in that same category.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. This is the point. Again, there's different theories as to what. He certainly stepped up his career after that point, didn't he? So, it's a debate as well. Were they ever really edgy in the first place?
But this is the thing. What was he just a... a question I've been asked before is...
person.
Yeah, or just a snob who was latching on to something that was catching on in communities all around Dublin. Because there's another Irish band here, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, called Aslan. And they're a big Irish band. In Ireland, they would be as big as U2 and as well known as U2. And if you listen to Aslan's lyrics, they're the last thing that the powers that be want people to listen to. They're real enlightening songs that he sings. And I've always harboured the belief that the reason Aslan never made it on the big, big time like U2, and he was due to sign a big contract in England, and it was pulled at the last minute.
Yeah.
And the story in the papers was because it was to do with drugs, because the lead singer was a heroin addict and stuff. And I couldn't
That's
help thinking,
never
hang on a
stopped
minute,
people.
you know, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, you know, you can name every bloody band in the 60s. They were all on drugs. So that's
Yeah.
a mute argument in my opinion. And I think it had more to do with the lyrics. That he was probably asked, listen, you need to tone down your lyrics, you need to change them. And
Yeah.
I believe he was a man of principle and said no.
Yeah,
And
that
they just went flat after that, you know. And they're still popular today. They still gig in pubs all around Ireland, and they pack every place they play.
When were they sort of like big? About what, 10 years ago or so?
But
Or?
well, no, from 1983, 84 onwards. You know, they split up in 1988, and they said it was to do with heroin and stuff like that. He was sacked from the band, and he got back together then in 92, 93, I think it was. And they released a song called Crazy World, and that became their anthem. And then they done an album then in 1999 called Made in Dublin, and that like just went stratospheric in this country and amongst the Irish community worldwide. They'd be well known among the Irish community. But anywhere outside of that, they're not known at all. And I've always maintained it's because of the lyrics in their songs. And not because of...
Well, it makes sense. I mean, because that's nonsensical. I mean, like, unless he was completely non-functional, but, you know, like, what, late 80s, early 90s, we've got Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, we've got, you know, The Lars, we've got Nirvana. Later than that, you've got Pete Doherty, for crying out loud.
All bands who were known to be drug users, all of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, and particularly with regards to the Libertines supposedly spreading a sort of anti-authoritarian and yet literary type, you know, oh, it's so brilliant. It's not. It's crap. Like, do you know
I
what
was
mean?
never
Like,
a fan of the Libertines. I didn't think they were any good, to be honest with you. You
No.
know, but if you listen to Aslan, like they've a good few albums out, but if you listen to them, you can become very hooked on them very, very quickly. They
I
are
will
a
check
very,
them
very
out.
good band. I'll send you a link to on Skype later on. I will send you a link to some of their stuff. I think you'd actually like them. Lyrically speaking, you'd like them very much. They're a very good band. But as I said, I've always maintained they didn't make it outside of Ireland because of the lyrics in their songs.
I mean, it's certainly, like, you know, there's documented evidence that basically, like, bands like Crass were certainly, you know, life was made very, very difficult for them. You know, constantly sort of being mucked about at Dial Farm and stuff like that. A strange influx of far right turning up to try and smash up every single gig that they turned, you know, that they I mean, they mucked about. I'm amazed they got away with it, actually, with the stuff they did with the Thatchergate tapes and stuff like that. Fair play to them. But yeah, I mean, a prime example of that would be the Rolling Stones, that were, you know, even if you disregard the mysterious death, probably murder of Brian Jones, like the sort of the 1968 drugs bust, where a bloke called Schneiderman, who turned out to be essentially a CIA agent that was he turned up and provided acid called Orange Sunshine, which was made by Owsley Stanley, who's essentially probably a CIA operative that seemed to sort of make huge amounts of this particular type of acid and get away with it like for years and years and years, and himself spent time as a youth in a mind control facility. This guy Schneiderman turned up with this like suitcase full of acid and about 6 different passports, and just so happened to be able to get past the police after the Rolling Stones were arrested. And, like, you know, they were threatened with jail and stuff like that. And shortly after that, I think they became a lot more pliant to demands from authority to be slightly less authoritarian. And then, you know, shortly after that, Altamont happened as well. So that you know, it didn't go well for the Rolling Stones for quite a long time. But basically, it was revealed that this guy Schneiderman was sent over directly by J. Edgar Hoover as a sort of extension of COINTELPRO. And COINTELPRO was an admitted government program to basically counteract leftist and social mobility type actions, like particularly the SDS and the Black Panthers, the Revolutionary Action Movement, a lot of Black Power groups, and tied into this, you know, they felt the need to take this particular action against the Rolling Stones. You know, what the deal was that was made with them, who knows? But they certainly were threatened with jail off the back of this obvious sting.
So now they're doing what they're told, basically, and now the rest is history, I suppose, because they ended up, they made it to be one of the biggest bands in the world, and they're still going to this day, so obviously...
They all got knighthoods as well, didn't they?
Well, they did, so obviously...
At least some of them did.
And I don't think you get... Well, I know Mick Jagger took a knighthood, but you don't get a knighthood for no good reason. You know, it's usually for services rendered, you know, that you get a knighthood. Anyway, Neil, listen, I need to go to my last set of ads, so do you mind hanging out for a minute or so?
Yeah, no worries.
Folks, we'll be back in 2 minutes with Neil Sanders.
You're listening to Liffey Sound, www.liffeysoundfm.ie. Listen online. Community radio at its best.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome back to the World You Don't Know show. I have Neil Sanders on the line. I'm going back to Neil now in a couple of seconds. But I just have a quick announcement to make, and this is in relation to the Open Minds Conference, Part 2, taking place on the 2nd to the 4th of March 2018 in Dooley's Hotel in Waterford. Great location. Last year's one was in February, and it was an absolute blast, and I went off without a hitch. It was a brilliant weekend of Open Minds. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick list of the lineup. I just need to move the mic for a second. Now, here's the lineup. Those conspiracy guys are coming back. Ole Damagard, previous guest on my show. Mark Devlin, previous guest. Ger Banks, Tom Ryan, Daniel Levert, Anthea Fenton, Aisling Fitzgibbon, Barry Fitzgerald, Alan and Steve from OYM Radio. Them lads get everywhere. Bernadette Bowen, Kyan Foley, Brian McCarthy, John Wilson, the whistleblower, Garda whistleblower, Mary Graham, Max Egan via a live feed, Damien Mooney and David Walsh. And that's a brilliant lineup. They're going to be talking about history, law and banking, natural health, empowering changes in your life, exposing corruption, mind control, what we're talking about here tonight, expanding consciousness, yoga, meditations. It'll be a brilliant weekend, an absolutely brilliant weekend. It'll be shamanic drumming and all there. And I tell you now, it's an event not to be missed. Tickets are now on sale on Eventbrite. You can go to omic2.eventbrite.ie or go to openmindsconference.com. And Trevor Evers and the gang down there in Waterford are putting all this together. A great bunch of people from the Awaken Aware in South East Ireland page. This is their second event. Fair play to them. They've really knocked the ball out of the ballpark, so to speak. Anyway, I'm going to go back to Neil. Neil, we've got a few minutes left now on the show, about 10 more minutes left. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about is something that's in relation to Ireland. You often speak about ritualistic abuse and stuff like that in some of your talks. And a question that came in from one of my listeners, Gavin again, the guy that sent a question in earlier, what he wants to know is, I'm just going to get the question, if you just bear with me for a second, I have the question here. He was asking about the Tuam baby scandal. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but in Tuam and Galway recently... Oh,
it's just it was a Magdalene Laundry or...
Yeah, I think it was a Magdalene Laundry, but there was over 800 babies, corpses found. Now, if you, I don't know, in a septic tank, that's right, yeah. Now, I don't know if you know much about the case. Now, I haven't really looked into it myself too much, but he's asking, do you think it might have been, ritualistic in nature, that all these babies died in that way, or... Do you have any views on it at all?
I really don't know enough about it to make an intelligent comment, to be quite honest, other than it's obviously horrific. I mean, from the limited bits that I read, I think they tried to sort of play it off as an abortion type action.
Yeah. It was discussed, and anyway, I mean, they're still trying to cover it up in this country today.
Well, I mean, it raises all sorts of questions as well. I mean, like, if that is true, where are these pregnant women coming from? Are they pregnant when they arrive? Are they pregnant somehow during their stay? Are these women from outside the community, like, do you know what I mean, going and having illegal abortions? Are these abandoned babies? There's so many questions it raises.
Yeah. I've wondered about the historical nature of all of this. These were meant to be nuns, women of God, so to speak, who were looking after these fallen women, for want of a... And I don't even like using that term, but that's what they were known as back then, fallen women. There must have been some sort of ritualistic, satanic crap going on for them to be that disgusting and horrible, these people,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's surprisingly easy to... convince people to belittle and demonise and denigrate a people if you give them a purpose and a reason behind it. So
if you look at Ireland back then, unlike England, and I know England has its religion and stuff like that, like, Protestant, they're mostly Protestant in England and Church of England and whatnot, and here it's mostly Catholic, and there are Protestants here in this country as well. If you look back at our history, prior to the state separating itself from the church was all about mind control, you know. I mean, we had priests walking around our neighbourhoods as kids, knocking on people's doors, checking up on families, you know, like it was none of their bloody business, but they made it a business.
Yeah, and I think that was the other point I was going to make, is that basically in any type of entity like that, the power is quite seductive, and the nature, you know, human nature is shown time and time again that people will kick down, and any dissatisfaction of or kick to what they perceive to be down, and any dissatisfaction in their own life, it's far easier to take it out on other people. It's you know, all you need to offer people in any type of situation, be it advertising, be it allegiance, be it, you know, it's quite simple. You need to explain what the world's about. You need to offer them their place in the world, and you need to offer them comfort and companionship. That's it. Right,
I mean, what these people were like, you know, when you think of priests and stuff like that in the confession, you know, the amount of goods they had on people, they knew most people's deepest, darkest secrets in the community.
Oh, yeah.
That was some level of control, wasn't it?
Of course, absolutely. And again, that must be quite powerful and seductive, basically. But again, if you have those three aspects, you can be convinced that anything that group says is correct and is right. And so, you know, again, it's kind of like the North Korea thing. This is what I was trying to get into, basically. You know, you can't go there with a news crew and say to people, is the leader capable of doing anything wrong, for example? Because basically, like that, they'll die if they say yes, or if they'll, no, more importantly, they'll die if they don't say no enthusiastically enough.
I mean, even you look at their newsreader, she's been getting a lot of press lately, funny enough.
Yeah, she looks like a Stepford wife.
Yeah, the one in the pink dress, and she's like, she cracks me up when I'm watching her, you know, telling us that they've let off a nuclear bomb.
I mean, it's a very strange, you know, it's an augmented reality, really, isn't it? You know, you've seen, didn't they? I'm sure they broadcast themselves winning the World Cup.
They probably did.
Stuff like, you know, it's this ludicrous pageantry. It's like, you know, it's a terrifying pantomime. Yeah, basically.
I remember seeing a documentary where people were it wasn't getting blindness cured, but they were getting operations on their eyes and getting some of their sight back. And, you know, these people were thanking Kim Jong-un for their eyesight, you know, saying, like, our great leader has restored my eyesight. Fucking, he hasn't done a thing for you, you know. Guy's a little knob.
Not to say that there's not, you know, demagoguery in other countries as well, like, I don't know, America.
I mean, I'd love to put myself forward, and I really would, and I mean this sincerely, and if Donald Trump or Kim Jong-un are listening, they probably are, but if they're listening, I want to put myself forward as an intermediary between the two. I'd sort all the problems out, the two of them. You know? I'll just put the two of them in a UFC cage and let them battle it out, you know?
Yeah, that would be interesting. Like, I don't know if it'd go the entire distance, but, you know, I think
it'd be an interesting fight, though, wouldn't it? It'd be I'm sure Donald Trump's hair would probably win the fight, you know, above all. Listen, I got another text in off Raymore, who's a UK resident. He's one of my regular listeners, and he's talking about Mick Jagger. He said Mick Jagger was sentenced to 3 months in 1967, but he's not sure if he saved that sentence.
Yeah.
And I think that was for a joint, wasn't it? I think he was caught with some cannabis or something like that.
I think he was caught a few times. Do you know what I mean? Like, but certainly the bust. I'm pretty sure it was at Keith Richards' house. Although I may be completely wrong about that. I'm pretty sure that was 1968, and that was, you know, that really scared them for a time. But yeah, you know, I don't doubt that Ray's correct. What happened in that particular sentence, I do not know.
Now, 2 more subjects I want to bend your ear about just before we go. You've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. And they're two of the most far-out subjects that are out there, Neil, and I'm sure you've come across them. One is the flat earth and the other is the Mandela effect. I just want your opinions on both. We start with the flat earth. What's your opinion on that? Do you think it's a massive psyop, or do you think there might be something in it?
No, I don't think there's anything in it. Like, it's ridiculous, obviously. Like, you know, the main premises just don't hold up, do they? You know, water can't stick to a spinning ball. Yes, it can. Spin a bucket upside down. It's called centrifugal force. Gravity doesn't exist. Well, you show me something that doesn't obey the laws of gravity, then. Like, no, it's nonsense. Like, Eric Dubé's an idiot and a charlatan and a con man. And I'm sure he's making some money off of it.
Now, I've had one of them, the flat earthers. There's another flat earther out there. I can't think of his name now, but I had him on my show. An American guy. I can't remember the name of him now.
Jaron?
No, not him. I can't think of his name. Mark Sargent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've had him on my show about a year and a half ago, and It was a tough show now, I'll say that, you know. I just gave him the hour and I let him talk about his flat earth, stuff like that. I don't subscribe to either theory, to be honest with you, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm not getting off this planet any day soon, so I don't really care what shape it is, you know. I look after my own family and that's it. But another big phenomenon that's doing the rounds on the internet, and I've been caught out with a few of them, is the Mandela effect.
Right, okay.
Now, one of the things that has intrigued me about the Mandela effect, that I've been questioning my own memory on, is the colour of the A-Team van. Now, I was an avid A-Team fan growing up, and I'm convinced that van was black, all black, with a red stripe.
Right.
But if you look at it today, the top half of the van is grey, and the bottom half is black.
Yeah, the roof was grey, was it not?
Well, I remember it all being black, to be honest with you. That was just my memory. But you see, it could be a false memory, I don't know. You know, so.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. It's very difficult to say. It depends how cynical you want to be about it. Like, it is entirely possible that people are remembering different things because, you know, time is not linear, etc. Like, you know, there could be some actual tangible reason. If you want to take the hardline other cynical angle, it's like, well, which is more likely, that basically you're remembering it wrong, or that the entire universe has changed for that one specific thing? It's probably more likely that you're remembering it. If you want to be really, really hard about it, you say basically, could you not argue that that's a depiction of sort of the arrogance of the internet age? Like, oh no, it couldn't be that I'm mistaken. Oh no, the entire universe is wrong.
Has to be wrong, yeah. Yeah, I can't help
I'm not
thinking
saying that's definitely the case. But
no, I know that. No. I just can't help thinking that this, you know, this flat earth stuff and this Mandela stuff has been kicked out there because with the internet over the last few years, as you know, Neil, most people are getting closer and closer to the truth about what's really going on in this world. You know who might be running it and the crap that's going on, and this is just to divert you away from all of that and concentrate on something silly.
There's a danger with all these things as to why you actually sort of like invested so much into it. With something like the shape of the Earth, again, there's an argument that basically, if the general population is wrong about something as fundamental as the shape of the Earth, well, maybe they were wrong in their appraisal and their dismissal of you. And if you're right about this thing that they're all wrong about, that means that they were all wrong about you. And there is a danger, just because of the mechanism that is utilised by charlatans, that they understand those cult mechanisms, give people a purpose, tell them what the world is like and give them a community to be involved in. That you can provide this for people and you can make money off of it.
I don't know if anyone's making money off the Mandela effect now. I don't know.
Some people are monetising videos on YouTube.
Well, there is that, I suppose,
Patreon set up and all of this. I think you'd be surprised.
Yeah. Well, I have come up towards the end of the show. Do you want to give out the names of your websites and the names of your books and where they can be got?
Yeah, sure. It's neilsandersmindcontrol.com, and I'm also on Facebook. The books are Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own, volumes 1 and 2. They're about mind control, and I've just released a new book called Now Is the Only Thing That's Real, a re-examination of the Manson murders, motives and mythos. And this is basically looking at the Charles Manson case, and looking at basically every aspect of it, all the different theories, trying to break it down, find out exactly what's real, what's not, what actually happened, which theories are correct, and to determine the real motivations behind the killings.
And that's all in the new book?
Yeah.
I'd say that'd be a riveting read now. I mean, I know I've seen a video recently with Charles Manson. He strikes me as a very intelligent man, and I think he's
a very wily man. I don't know as I go so far as to say intelligent.
I'm sure he's probably a bit nutty. Okay, I mean, who'd put a swastika in their head? But
well, there's an interesting story about that. It's actually taken from a friend of his called Walks on Top, that was an American Indian, a Native American that he met in prison, and he put it on there to protect him from the white man. Right.
Yeah, strange thing to do, but anyway, listen, Neil, I have come up to the end of the show, so listen, I want to thank you very much for coming on to the show. It's been a very interesting hour, to say the least.
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome in. Thanks very much, and I'll talk to you very again soon.
All right, take care.
All right, you take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was Neil Sanders. You can check his website out, neilsandersmindcontrol.com. He's got several books there that you can go on and buy the books and stuff. I just want to thank all the listeners for your input tonight. Gavin for sending in the text, Ray for sending in the text. Really appreciate that. It's always good when somebody else asks the questions rather than me. Just one more thing about the Open Minds Conference. I want to give Trevor Evers and his crew another plug. It's coming up on the 2nd to the 4th of March 2018. 3 days of truth, knowledge and awareness. And there's a great lineup. Those conspiracy guys, Ollie Damagard, Mark Devlin talking about the music industry, Ger Banks, Tom Ryan talks about sovereignty, Danielle Leverett, I'm not sure what she's talking about, Anthea Fenton, Ashton Fitzgibbon, that's the girl against fluoride, she's a lovely girl, I've had her on my show once, Barry Fitzgerald, Alan and Steve from OYM Radio, they have great pair of lads, they should be great crack, Bernadette Bowen, as we like to say here in Dublin, Cian Foley, Brian McCarthy, John Wilson, the Garda whistleblower, Mary Graham, Max Egan with a live feed, I think he's over in South America during the show, Damien Mooney and David Walsh, talking about history, law and banking, natural health, empowering change, exposing corruption, mind control, expanding consciousness, yoga, meditations, shamanic drumming. And you can book tickets. It's in Dooley's Hotel in Waterford, a great hotel. The crack you have there at night, having a few points, it's crack is 90, as they like to say in the Isle of Man, and it's well worth going. You can get tickets at www.omic2.eventbrite.ie. But if you go on to openmindsconference.com or the Awaken Awareness South East Ireland Facebook page, there'll be loads of details there, so you will be able to get tickets that way. I'll be gone, and I recommend that you go, because it's going to be a brilliant show. Anyway, folks, this has been The World You Don't Know. I have come to the end of the show. Remember, folks, I will be back next week. Hopefully I'll have another guest for you next week. If not, I'll be hearing my own, just rambling on as per usual. So remember, folks, the world is full of wonderful people, and if you can't find one, be one. Talk to us all about it very soon. Bye-bye.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waking humanity, one soul at a time. This is the World You Don't Know radio show with your host, Nick O'Connell.